Hokusai, Isamu Noguchi, Izzy Miyake. When I think about Japanese art and design, I think about a distinctive graphic quality to the use of line, shapes, and space. Japanese artists and designers seem to have a unique ability to balance complexity and simplicity. In this second of my two-part series about my recent travels to Japan, we'll explore how these qualities translate into modern Japanese hand knitting. And we'll travel to Kyoto, Takayama, and Kanazawa to see more of the beautiful country of Japan. Hi, I'm Melanie, and you're watching Yarn Journeys. I am a knitter, spinner, and sometimes sewist, and I live in Arlington, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. If you are a returning viewer to my channel, welcome back. And if you are new here, I am so glad you found me. Here's what's up for today's video. First, we're going to talk modern Japanese hand knitting. And I'll also take you to a few yarn shops and show you some yarny goodness. Then I'll show you some footage of my travels to Kyoto, Takayama, and Kanazawa, and some points in between. And then, as always, we'll do some show and tell of the progress on my recent projects. So, grab something to drink, perhaps something to knit or spin, and we'll get right into it. As I mentioned in my last episode about Japan, Japanese hand knitting has been thriving for decades. You may already be aware of the fabulous stitch dictionaries that Gayle Roehm has translated and published in collaboration with a number of Japanese knitwear designers. If you're not familiar with Gayle's work, I highly recommend you watch her interview with Andrea of Fruity Knitting. I will link to that episode in the show notes in the description box. Japanese knitting patterns are very different from those we are used to using here in the West. First of all, besides being written in Japanese, they are way more graphic and depend a lot more on charts and drawings for you to understand how to proceed in knitting a garment. They tend to also feature only one size, assuming that you as the knitter already know how to make simple adjustments to make the pattern fit you. Melissa of the YouTube channel Mel Makes Stuff did an episode in which she knitted a beautiful garment from a Japanese pattern with the help of Google Translate and a little looking up here and there what the various symbols meant. It's a great episode, and I will link to that as well in the show notes in the description box. So let's take a look at some recent Japanese knitwear designs and see if we can pick up on some things that are distinctive to Japanese knitting design. Eri Shimizu's Kareno is a boxy pullover with cables, but the cables kind of merge into one another, as if it's deconstructing the classic Aran sweater design. Miyuki Watanabe's Ama Ama features a play of feminine stitched smocking with pleats for a beautiful drapey top. Ruriko's Ekubo is a comfy sweatshirt that is refined by an all-over a delicate stitch pattern. And another one by Ruriko, this Kiro, has an amazing brioche funnel neck and yoke whose complex pattern is balanced by the simplicity of the rest of the garment's body. Finally, Noriko Ishikawa's Cocoon Choki is a lovely oversized vest with very balanced proportions. It's quite drapey with wide shoulders, yet these proportions don't overpower the wearer. So all of these designs and some others I have put into a bundle in Ravelry called Japanese Patterns, and I will link to that below so you can check them out if you're interested in learning more about them. And this discussion about modern Japanese knitting brings me back to Amarisu, that magazine that seeks to join the best of Japanese and Western hand knitting together. I mentioned Amarisu in my first episode about Japan. Well, they happen to be based in Kyoto. They first started publishing in 2014, and I visited their store, Walnut, in Tokyo. Well, they also have a Walnut in Kyoto, of course, and it was only a few blocks away from my hotel, so I had to visit that one too. So the Walnut in Kyoto is tucked away on a side street in central downtown Kyoto. But it's quite easy to get to from many of the tourist hotels. Like its sister store in Tokyo, you can find there many of the more famous Western brands, such as La Bien-Aimée, Bichet Bouche, and I actually saw there this beautiful wall of Shetland yarn for Japanese knitters who enjoy their color work. When I was there, there was another American tourist, and we were wandering around looking at the beautiful display of yarns, both Western and Japanese. There was lots of the Amarisu private label yarns there, as well as Daruma and other Japanese yarns. I had a lovely conversation with the person who was working in the store that day, who happened to have family in Chicago, and we were talking about the differences between Japanese knitting and Western knitting, and how the patterns worked and so on. I did bring some things home with me. First, this edition of Amarisu, which is the fall-winter 22 version. It's a lovely magazine. I mean, there are sweaters to knit, of course. This one is Mon Bijou, designed by Alice Cateno. There is another one like this one, which is a big fluffy scarf. So the magazine also contains articles about other kinds of Japanese art. Here is one about the Japanese art of, let me make sure I have it correct, kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of pottery mending and making sure that the lines are visible. And I just find it interesting for this juxtaposition of a traditional Japanese art with modern Japanese hand knitting. Here is the Brute, and it's by Hiromi Nagasawa. And, you know, I just love the proportions of this simple pullover. So I am excited to continue to look at Amarisu for inspiration in the future. Amarisu also publishes books for Japanese knitwear designers and yarn manufacturers. So this is the Cosmology collection put out by Daruma, and it features the designs by Kiyomi Bergen and Shihiko Bergen. I hope I have that close to right, but take a look at these designs. So this is the Dust King sweater, which is knit with Daruma's version of silk mohair, and it's made through holding different numbers of the lace weight yarn together. And I hope that's not shining too much, but I just think that is beautiful. And then there is this sweater, which is an oversized cardigan, but I love how the little sort of tucks in the fabric give a little bit more visual appeal to what initially looks like a simple sweater. And that is called the Kuiper. I think that's how you pronounce that. Anyway, I'm looking forward to knitting something from this book. In Kyoto, I also made my way to Itokobako, which is a yarn shop in Kyoto mainly associated with Hamanaka yarns. It is a short walk away from the Nijojo Castle, so if you're out doing some sightseeing, you can check out the castle and then do some yarn shopping only a couple blocks away. When I got there, there was a nice group of ladies who were doing some crochet. I think there was one or two who were knitting, and they were very much enjoying each other's company. The staff who worked there didn't speak much English, but they offered me a very warm welcome, and they were very smiley and made sure I understood what was where, and I really enjoyed visiting that shop. As I mentioned, they mainly feature Hamanaka yarns there. There's also a big focus on crochet, and if you're into amigurumi, I think I have that pronounced right, those crochet animals, there's lots for you there. Also, if you are into crocheting bags, they had lots of specialty yarns and fiber for crocheting tote bags and purses and things like that. Really cool place. I, of course, had to walk away with something, and I fell in love with the labels on the sock yarn. This is Corpocore, and I don't know, hopefully you can see the cartoons of the it's a squirrel and a little thing there that in the front. I just thought this was adorable. And how did I know this was sock yarn? Because of the sock on the back. So just looking, it's 25 grams. And I wanted to make sure I had enough yarn for socks, so I got 2 of them. So, as I mentioned in the first episode about Japan, seeing yarn in sewing shops is really common. And in fact, after dinner one night, my husband and I were walking through Nishiki Market on our way back to our hotel, and we walked by a sewing store, and would you know it, there's a big wall of yarn right out front. We didn't go in this particular shop, but when we were in Takayama, which is a town in the what's called the Japanese Alps, we did find a sewing and craft shop, and that was a lot of fun. I'll explain. Takayama is really famous for its wood and lacquerware. So like these bowls. which I fell in love with and brought home with me. I just love the red and natural color polka dots. I'm not sure what I will use them for. I think they're intended as rice bowls, but this is definitely right up my alley. Anywho, in this particular sewing and craft shop, which I unfortunately don't know the name of because everything was labeled and signed in Japanese, there was again a wall of knitting yarn and tons of it in all kinds of fibers. There was acrylic, there was cotton, there was silk, there was wool. And the husband and wife that owned the shop, again, didn't speak English, but were very lovely and welcoming. I bought this cone of Hamanaka fingering. It is 100% wool, 500 grams. No, it's 300 grams and 1,200 meters. So this is a lot of yarn. I am thinking that it is going to be a shawl of some kind, but it's got, you can see from the top of the cone that it is self-striping. So I think this is going to make something quite interesting. The couple that owned the store were very concerned that I didn't have a pattern, and I was trying to communicate with them like, no, I have patterns, and they were trying to like maybe copy one in Japanese, and I was like, no, I'm fine. I think I can find one. But they were so sweet, and they took me over to a map of the world and had me place with a pin where I was from, and they keep track of where all the tourists who shop in the store come from by having them place a pin in a map, and I just thought that was so cute. I also made a stop in at Kanazawa M'za, a department store in downtown Kanazawa, not far from the train station. There was a whole floor of that department store dedicated to sewing and crafts, of which a substantial part was set aside for yarn crafts. There was a whole wall of yarn that had yarn of every kind: wool, cotton, silk, acrylic, lots of textures, again, lots of shiny things. And there are also lots of samples, patterns, magazines. Surely if you are a knitter local to Kanazawa, that may very well be the place you go to for your knit store fix. I really enjoyed seeing everything they had to display, and I came away with some more fingering weight yarn. This is 100% wool, and this is actually a singles. I got 3 25-gram skeins of, it's called Make by Olympus, which is another Japanese manufacturer. I just really loved the plummy shades. It seemed reminiscent of Noro in the fact that it's a singles and it's very variegated, but it's almost a little bit more refined. I really look forward to playing with this and seeing what it looks like when it is all knit up. After leaving Kyoto, we made our way to Lake Kikuyacho to see Mount Fuji in all its glory. And then we sped away on the Shinkansen to Kyoto. Kyoto's Kamo River is a great place to see the local wildlife and this lady and her goat who are stepping across the river. Nijojo Castle is beautiful. and I got to make a sketch of the gardens. To beat the crowds, we went to Fushimi Inari Taisha super early in the morning. It is quite the climb to get it through all the gates to the top of the shrine. Heading up to the top. Of the Fushimi Inari Taisha Shrine in Kyoto. Whew. Lots of stairs to climb. And I found a shady spot to do a sketch. I thought this section of Fushimi Inari Taisha with these frogs was so much fun. In Kyoto, I found this vending machine that featured caviar and fancy French food. Again, a very early morning start was worth it to take in the beauty of Kyoto's famous bamboo forest. And we paid a visit to the Tenryuji Buddhist temple. Where school children were visiting wearing their traditional kimonos. And I did another sketch. And of course, we had to go see the monkeys at the Arashiyama Monkey Park. The Kinkakuji temple is gorgeous in all its gold splendor. Visiting Kyoto's Yasaka Shrine at night allowed us to see it all lit up. Then it was on to Takayama in the Japanese Alps, where finally we got some rain. And you know I had to sketch that bridge. There's a museum to 1960s Japanese culture, but the real draw is Takayama's Edo period architecture. At this shop, I thought I had found another yarn store, but actually, these skeins are of embroidery cotton that are hand-dyed for that special Japanese art of sashiko. green tea ice cream, yum. At Suganuma, we saw these Edo period traditional Japanese houses, which of course offered another opportunity to do some sketching. Then we headed to Kanazawa on the coast to see the beautiful samurai houses in the Samurai Quarter. This shop specialized in traditional indigo dyeing. Kanazawa's Onichi Market is so much fun to walk through. The azaleas still bloomed in Kenryuken Garden, which made it a lovely place to do a sketch. Now it's time for show and tell. Of course, my favorite finished object to show you today is my Tolsta tea, which I very recently finished. This was a very satisfying, quick knit. I highly recommend casting one on if you are looking for a summer t-shirt pattern. I used Brooklyn General's Dapple, which is 60% merino, 40% cotton. I really don't enjoy knitting with cotton. I find it hard on my hands, but the fabric is really nice and stretchy and comfortable. You may notice that there's a little bit of stripiness going on here. The directions for using Dapple, according to Brooklyn Tweed, say to alternate skeins, which I did. And I had this unexpected sort of little bit of stripiness, and I feel like it is a nice design element to a rather simple, straightforward raglan tee. So I am very pleased and satisfied with this knit. And so to works in progress. Last episode, I talked about my James Watts Earth and Air brioche pullover. I wasn't really satisfied knitting it, and I'd made a mistake and wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with it. So I asked for your advice, and I want to thank you so much for your advice because I frogged it. Those of you who responded unanimously said, just frog it. Life is too short to be working on something you're not enjoying. And I agree. So that is what I did. Thank you for chiming in. So since that episode, I also cast on for Stephen West's surprise sock along, the Cosmic Blast socks. And you may be knitting in that sock along as well. Are you? How are you finding it? I'd like to know if you're making those Stephen West Contrast Blast socks. Please tell me about it in the comments. What are your colors? How are you finding the pattern? I am using this delightful at Haynes House yarn that I got at the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. It's peachy with some green flecks. I needed something to pair with it, which is this lovely green variegated sock yarn from Knit Picks. So together they are beautiful. But if you are doing the contrast blast socks and you haven't gotten up to the second clue, spoil alert. So this is how it is knitting up together. So I really love these yarns and how the two colors work. But I must say on the other sock that I knit, I dropped some stitches while picking up the stitches for the gusset, and I'm taking a break. I just got so frustrated, and now I'm going to have to frog the other sock in order to restart this. Anyway, I am going to finish these socks, I believe, but I'm going to put this on hold for now because it's more important that I have fun knitting than I knit to complete a project and stay on track with a knit along. I don't know. How do you feel about that kind of thing? Do you do knit alongs? Do you find that the knit along helps you to keep on track and you finish no matter what by the deadline? Or are you just more inspired by what other people are doing and you can take them or leave them? Now, what do you think about knit alongs? Sometimes they're fun because they make you explore new techniques, new type. You learn a lot, and it's fun to have camaraderie, even if it's only via the internet. But right now in my life, I don't necessarily need the artificial stress of a knitting deadline. That's just how I'm thinking. So there isn't actually anything on my needles right now, which is really kind of bizarre. I'm used to always having one project going. I just finished a swatch, however, for a pattern by Camilla Vad, which is the chunky Magnolia cardigan. I have been looking at her Magnolia series of projects for quite some time, and I'm thinking, you know what? The time is now. And the yarn I'm using for it is this yarn from Rowan, which is now discontinued. It's called Cork, and it's a chainette of fine merino and polyamide. Let's see, can you see how it is there? Maybe. Anyway, I have had this in my stash in one form or another since 2004, and several months ago, I ripped whatever I had knitted in this out, and I reconditioned all the yarn, bathed it, reskeined it, and now I get to use it for another sweater. So hopefully I'll be able to give you an update about that in my next episode. I do have a major acquisition though. I bought from Dreaming Robots an electric eel wheel 6.0. So I, of course, continue to love and spin with my beloved Ladybug. I wanted to get an e-spinner. So this is the electric eel wheel. Because the past couple of weeks I have had to spend time outside the house, away from my wheel, doing a fair amount of sitting around, and I wanted a way to keep spinning because today is in fact the last day of the Tour de Fleece. So I wanted a way to keep spinning through the Tour de Fleece with my electric eel wheel when I couldn't be spinning on my Ladybug. In my next episode, I am specifically going to be doing a wrap-up of my Tour de Fleece experience and what I've been working on with my spinning. So I thought I would just show you my delightful new e-spinner, the electric eel wheel 6. And in that episode, I will also give you my review of the wheel after I've been using it for a little while. So you can look forward to that. So that's it for this episode of Yarn Journeys. I do hope you enjoyed coming to Japan with me and checking out all the wonderful hand knit goodness that Japan has to offer. If you enjoyed the show, if you learned something, please do hit that like button. It will help people like yourself find content that they might enjoy too. And also, if you don't want to miss the next episode of Yarn Journeys, be sure to subscribe. So that's all for today. I'll see you in the next one.